Hey everyone, my name is Adrienne Carlson. I'm a physical therapist. I work at Benchmark Physical Therapy in Gresham, and I specialize in pelvic floor muscle and women's health. Today I wanted to talk about the lovely pelvic floor. A lot of people don't know a lot about the pelvic floor muscles. It tends to be an area that gets ignored, and so I just wanted to talk a brief overview about the pelvic floor muscles. I can show you some stretches that we can do for the pelvic floor muscles, and then I also wanted to talk about proper bowel movements and urination too that can help. Pelvic floor muscles actually are very similar between males and females. There's only a slight difference between the vagina and the penis, but otherwise the pelvic floor muscles look very similar. So we have 3 layers of pelvic floor muscles. They attach to the pubic bone and come all the way to the sacrum and the tailbone, and then they attach to each of the ischial tuberosities here. So they kind of give like a hammock for our pelvis. So pelvic floor muscles typically, if we're just out walking around, they're slightly contracted to help support us. If we cough, we sneeze, we jump, they just contract a little bit more to help support us. When we sit to go to the bathroom, whether it's urination or having a bowel movement, they're meant to just relax and open so we can have success with that. The function of pelvic floor muscles, they help support our internal organs. So they support the bladder in the front, the rectum, and if you do have a uterus, it sits right in between the two. They also help control our bowel and bladder movement, like we mentioned, and then they're huge stabilizers for our pelvis and our spine. So they also get neglected if we have a lot of low back pain too. Just like any other muscle in the body, they can become too weak. So if we have a weakness like in our bicep or in our back, we tend to strengthen the muscles. So you can do that with the pelvic floor muscles, but they also can hold on to spasm. So they can be too tight, which then can cause difficulty with urination, or we feel like we have to go to the bathroom a lot, or we can get pelvic pain too. And so in that situation, we want to try to relax. The other thing about the pelvic floor muscles that a lot of people don't know is that it holds a lot of stress. So our first stress spot in our body is usually the upper trap. The second most common is in the pelvic floor muscles. An easy way to feel your pelvic floor muscles and kind of feel if they're too tight or if you're weaker is you can take a towel, and I'm going to place it as a diamond shape on this chair, and then we're going to just sit on the towel. So the towel, the front point is going to be by your pubic bone, the back point is going to be by your tailbone. So right now we are sitting on our sitting bones. We feel our pubic bone and our tailbone, and then the pelvic floor muscles just sit right in the center. So that towel is just sitting like this. So now to feel, so for a good pelvic floor muscle contraction, we want to think like there's a marble right in the middle of our pelvis. To activate the pelvic floor muscles, we're going to think about like squeezing around the marble, and then you gently lift the marble up off the chair. So you should just feel this little squeeze, lift, and it'll kind of feel like everything's lifting up off of the towel. So that's a pelvic floor muscle contraction. If we think about that same marble, we're going to think about, to relax our pelvic floor muscles, we're going to lower the marble back down and open everything up so you can feel that marble dropping down. And that's our pelvic floor muscles relaxing. So the other thing that the pelvic floor muscles do is they also lengthen. So if we're trying to pass gas, or if we have a little bit more of a bowel movement we can't get out, we kind of push out, and that's the pelvic floor muscles lengthening. So if you think about the marble and the same thing, you're going to push the marble just gently down into the towel, and you'll just feel the pelvic floor muscles lengthening a little bit more with a little bit of pressure. And that is how we contract the pelvic floor muscles, relax, and lengthen them. One thing with the pelvic floor muscles, a lot of times we're always told to keep doing Kegels or pelvic floor muscle contractions to help with any issues in this area. But like we talked about, a lot of times if we have tension or we're holding stress, it will cause us, if we do a bunch of pelvic floor contractions, we actually get more of a spasm instead of feeling that full relaxation. So sitting on a towel kind of gives you a good idea if you are holding on to too much tension in your pelvic floor muscles and you don't feel that relaxation happening, or if you can't really lift the marble, then we know that we have some weakness going on in the pelvic floor muscles. If you can't tell, that is when you come and see me and I can help you figure it out. now that we know about how to contract our pelvic floor muscles and how to relax them, I want to talk about how that impacts our bowel movements and how it impacts urination. Over 30% of people greater than 60 have issues with constipation. Younger than 60, it's about 16%, but it's still an issue that happens, and it's not something that we always have to live with. I'm going to give you little tips to help with bowel movements, and then we'll go into urination too. So normally when we sit on a toilet to have a bowel movement, when we sit in this position, our rectum and our anus are actually at a 90-degree angle. So even if you have good bowel movements, we still have to do a little pushing to get stool to come out. So a great way to counterbalance this is actually using a stool to put our feet on. So they make special squatty potty stools where they just come right around the base of the toilet so you can put your feet on. But now what happens, instead of this angle being at 90 degrees, we open this angle up much more, so now stool can easily come out. The other thing is you can gently lean forward so that we're opening that angle even more. Our bodies are actually designed to squat and have a bowel movement. So when you're in this position, you're putting yourself more in a squat position. The other thing you never want to do when you have a bowel movement is suck in, hold your breath, and then try to push, because that's putting a lot more pressure on our pelvic floor muscles, and you're actually not helping that stool to come out. So the best way is leaning forward and then blowing out like you're blowing out candles. And that's a great way to have a bowel movement. If you are dealing with any constipation, this is a wonderful way to have a bowel movement, or when we travel and we deal with issues, this is a great way to do that with traveling. If you do still deal with constipation, there's different stretches and different massage techniques that we can also teach you just to help with that movement a little bit more too. All right, so now urination. So urinary incontinence is a very common thing that happens. A lot of people think it's very normal to have incontinence after giving birth or as we age, but it's actually not normal, and it's things that we can do to help. So as I mentioned, sometimes it can be issues of holding too much tension in our pelvis. Sometimes we can have weakness in our pelvic floor muscles, and that can lead to incontinence too. But the one thing to remember is if you're dealing with any urinary incontinence, there's always hope, and you can always help with that. Even for males too, that it's also common in males, even though it doesn't get diagnosed very often. With urination, a lot of times whenever we go to the bathroom, we tend to want to push urine out. So we're in a rush, we're trying to leave the house, we're trying to do something, and we go to the bathroom and we push our urine out. So every time we do that, we're actually contracting the pelvic floor muscles to try to get the urine to come out. The pelvic floor muscles don't have to work at all when we go to the bathroom. So if we sit on the toilet, we should be relaxing our abdomen, and we should just relax the pelvic floor muscles to let them open, and then we should be urinating. So this also helps so we can empty the bladder where it needs to be, which will help so you don't have to go to the bathroom as often, or you don't feel that strong urge to go after you stand up from the toilet. So when we do go to the bathroom, we just want to be sitting nicely. We want to breathe, relax your abdomen, and then just let the urine to come out. If you ever notice that it feels like you're not fully emptying, sometimes you can shift your pelvis around or move back and forth to try to empty the bladder. You never want to try to push the urine out that way too. Good bathroom habits then are just watching when you do need to go to the bathroom. So we don't want to hold our urine for hours on end if we really do need to go to the bathroom. You want to be able to use the bathroom when you need to. We also don't want to have too much frequency with urination either. So if you find yourself going to the bathroom every single hour, that does mean that there is something going on with the pelvic floor muscles or something with the bladder, and that is all stuff that we can help with. So typically, with going to the bathroom or urinating, the average amount of times we should urinate during the day is between 6 and 8 times, and then either 0 to 1 time at night. So if you find that you're either going to the bathroom like twice a day, or you're going 12 times a day, that's too far on either end, and those are things that we can help with. With bowel movements, common bowel movements can be anywhere from 1 time every day, it can be 1 time every 3rd day to 3 times a day. So there's more discrepancy that way, but that's always something else to think about or to notice too. Next, what I wanted to show you is some stretches that you can do for your pelvic floor muscles. Just if you start feeling tension in your body, or if you notice you can't really relax the pelvic floor muscles, These stretches also are nice, even if you can't tell what's happening in your pelvic floor muscles, it just kind of helps build your awareness to that area. If you are stressed, these are really nice stretches you can do too. Bear in mind the stretches I am going to show you, just do it in moderation. If you feel pain with them or they're uncomfortable, you can come see me or see another provider and we can go over these exercises, or we can show you alternatives to these exercises too. So just bear that in mind. So my first favorite one is actually a deep squat. So you're going to position yourself down in a squat position when you're just bending your knees. You can kind of just put your hands on the inside of your hips and inside of your knees, and you're just gently pushing out. So this is a way that just helps open up your pelvic floor muscles. Plus, when we talked about those issues with like when we squat to have a bowel movement, we're kind of getting in that position. So it just helps open everything up. And then all you're doing is breathing. One thing we didn't talk about yet is our breath coincides with our pelvic floor muscles. So our breathing and our pelvic floor muscles always work together. So with any of these stretches, we always want to do what's called a diaphragmatic breath, where we're just feeling like we're breathing into our abdomen, we're feeling our lungs expand, and we're just trying to feel that relaxation of the pelvic floor muscles. If this is too much for you, you can take a foam roller, or you can take pillows, and you can put it right in between, and then just come down and do that same thing, but now you have a little bit of extra pressure. So now we're just breathing, taking those nice breaths into the abdomen, expand the rib cage, and you should just feel this nice relaxation of the pelvic floor muscles. I like to do this anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes, whatever makes you happy. The second one is we're gonna get on our hands and knees. So I'm gonna still use my foam roller, but you can also use a pillow too if you want. So I'm gonna go on my hands and knees, this way. Our feet are gonna be together, our knees are apart, and then I have the foam roller just at my ankles. Now, if we arch our back this way and kind of stick our bottom out, we're actually separating our pelvic floor muscles. So as soon as you do this, you should feel like kind of like an opening in between your sitting bones, and that's your pelvic floor muscles right there. If you sit back into your foam roller, keeping this nice arch, you just feel this lengthening at the pelvic floor muscles. Same thing with the deep squat, you're just gonna take a couple of breaths in. So we're gonna inhale, expand the abdomen, expand our rib cage, feel the pelvic floor muscles relax, and then as you exhale, you just try to keep them relaxed. This one is a more comfortable position to stay, so if you want to stay here for longer than a couple of minutes, by all means you can. My other favorite pelvic floor muscle stretch is actually called Happy Baby, and this one is a common yoga one. So we're gonna lie on your back. We're gonna bring your knees to your chest, and you're just grabbing your big toes. And then from here, again, we're letting our knees drop off to the side. So our pelvis is opening, so you can just feel a nice, gentle pelvic floor muscle stretch. And then same thing with this one, we're gonna inhale. So we take those nice breaths in, so you can feel your abdomen expanding, you can feel your lungs expanding, and that's gonna help relax your pelvic floor muscles. We exhale and just let everything go. So inhale, exhale, and let it all go. The other thing you can do with this diaphragmatic breath is you can also lengthen how long you're exhaling. So you can do a 4-second inhale and an 8-second exhale. And all of that is just gonna help with that relaxation of the pelvis too. All right, and then the last stretch I'm gonna show you, it always feels good and it's a nice one for the pelvic floor muscles, but this one also helps just with bowel movements and just gets everything moving in the intestines. So we're gonna do thread the needle. So you're just on your hands and knees. We're gonna take one arm up towards the ceiling, and then you just bring it and thread it in between your other arm and body. So you're just coming up and then back down. And then the whole time we're just breathing with it. So we're exhaling as we come through, inhaling as we come up. And then I would just do 10 on each side. But a lot of times too, if we're having any issues with constipation, that just helps with all of this movement through here too. So that's what I wanted to go over. I just want to bring more awareness into the pelvic floor muscle. I also want to just bring more awareness that urinary incontinence, even fecal incontinence, constipation, Those are all things that people deal with off and on in their lifetimes, but it's not something you have to deal with. So there's always help when you're dealing with those issues. So always reach out to any of us or any pelvic floor physical therapy specialists if you have questions about it or you want to go more in depth about it. So things we talked about is just what the pelvic floor muscles do, how we can contract them, how we can relax with them. And I will say also, I didn't even mention some of the other stuff that the pelvic floor muscles will do, so we just kind of did a brief overview. I showed you great ways that you can kind of stretch your pelvic floor muscles, which just helps with relaxation, and it's just a nice thing to do anytime you have stress in your life. We talked about good ways to urinate and to have a bowel movement. We talked about too, just focusing on this area just helps bring your awareness into that area too, so those stretches are great ones to do. The other thing, the last parting note I will say, other things that also put a lot of pressure on our pelvic floor muscles that we want to be aware of is just making sure you're not sucking in your abdomen during the day. So always kind of check in and make sure that we're just letting our abdomen go, because as we let our abdomen go, it helps release some of that pressure in your pelvic floor muscles. So that's my parting word for you, is just watch during the day that you're relaxing your abdomen and don't suck in anymore. If you have any questions at all for me, you can see the description in this video and contact us through that.